Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Investor Lab, the auditory and visual epicenter for passionate people seeking a life of freedom, choice, and abundance. And of course, my name is Goose. And who are you?
My name is Gabby.
Yay! Gabby's here.
Sorry, guys. Hello.
Hello. So this is one of our shorter episodes, Gabby.
Yeah. Brief chat, quick chat, good chat.
Good chat. What do we talk about?
Opportunity cost.
Specifically what? High definition. Gabby's got the giggles. You'll learn a little bit about high definition capacity in the episode. But what we talked about was the not only the financial implication of opportunity cost and how to start thinking about that, but also the emotional cost and the exponential rate of loss and return that you can gain by taking action and stepping outside your comfort zone. It's huge. It is huge. You know, I actually started to get a bit emotional during the recording of this episode. Whilst we were talking, I was just getting a little bit choked up thinking about all this kind of stuff. And I think that if more people can understand the real cost of inaction, I think it will help people to change the way that they show up in the world.
Yeah, I think that's why this episode is important, is because people don't really assign the actual cost of not just doing one thing over another, but it's like doing one thing over doing nothing. And it's all of that, you know, there is financial cost that comes with not doing anything, and there's financial cost. I mean, there's emotional cost that comes from not doing anything as well. So we kind of went into like, if you've got these goals that you've got, whether they're financial or emotional or spiritual or whatever, if you actually really want it, like what is stopping you from taking action now, which will in turn limit your ability to capitalize on the potential returns of that. So do you actually even want it in the first place? Do you want it enough to every day you're actually making a decision that I'm gonna act in fear and not do that because I'm just scared? Yeah.
Totally. When we talk about this in depth in this episode, I was surprised at how short it was, considering how impactful that this one is. You know, and one key thing, just to kind of give you an idea of what we're going to be talking about and what you're going to back to be listening to, is if you could have your wealth from 10 years' time, if you could have that today, how different would your life be now? That's something a little to think about. But without any further ado, I don't want to spoil it because there's so much gold in there. It's sick. It's so sick. Just quickly, if you're enjoying this, please let us know. We love it. We've been getting so much great feedback about this podcast. People say that it's really helping, all that kind of stuff. We are your friends in this world, and we want to hear from you. So send us an email. Send us an email to hello@dashdot.com.au. That goes to both me and Gabby, so we both get to respond to you and say good day and all of that kind of stuff. But of course, if you actually want help to take action, if you want to stop wasting opportunities, if you want to stop costing your future and you want to work with us directly, just feel free to book in a call. You can head to dashdot.com.au/discovery, or alternatively, just head to the investorlab.com.au. There's a contact form on the website. On that website, there's heaps of free resources. You can get a copy of my book. There's all kinds of really great stuff for you to interact with and do, not to mention all the past episodes that you can dig into as well. So, Gabby, without any further ado, let's get stuck in. Oh, one more thing I forgot.
Ooh. What did you forget?
Oh, God, I put the brakes on there, didn't I?
Wow.
We desire, if you have the capacity to do this, on Apple Podcast app, and then subscribe to this podcast. That would really mean a lot. That helps us to crank up the charts, and everyone loves a sense of achievement. So that would be really wonderful for us. But anyway, without any further ado, let's stop waffling and get stuck into it.
Awesome.
And as ever, we'll see you on the inside. Hey guys, welcome back to the Investor Lab, the one place that you can reliably go to make sure that you're going to get entertained and informed. How good is that?
You guys are lucky. How lucky are you?
Gabby, what is going on with you on this overcast day? It's pretty grim. We had a scorcher here on the weekend, and then now it's a little.
It turned very abruptly. I think the people of Bondi have been told off for not going to the beach by the weather itself.
Totally.
Guys, no more beach. I'm just turning off the beach.
Yeah, if you can't socially distance, there's going to be no more sun. That's it. Done.
It is known.
What else is happening, Gabby?
Well,
give us a little yarn. What's going on?
For those of you playing at home via the video and not just the podcast, we've got a new webcam so you can see my face in super high def just for fun. Because this is
and you've got a new backdrop as well.
I've got a new backdrop. I used to have a giant mirror behind my head.
You still do, but it's now behind a curtain.
There we go. Secrets all revealed.
Awesome. And you know what? And the webcam, though, I mean, I haven't got a I'm webcam.
You're working up to it.
I'm getting there. I haven't flexed those muscles yet. I don't think anyone needs any more definition around me. I'm usually a little boisterous enough. But
very deaf.
But for those who are playing at home, we are actually going to be actively embarking on a YouTube adventure.
Yeah.
So,
get more def of the face.
Yeah, super def.
Extra def.
We're going to have like little home studio set up. We're going to be influencers, Gabby, I think.
Oh. Not sure I'm ready for that.
Okay. All right, we'll tone down the influencer. We'll tone down the influencer chat a little bit. But what are we talking about today?
We are talking about opportunity cost.
Yes, we are. I reckon this is one of the biggest reasons that most people don't achieve what they want in life. And I think it's one of the biggest mistakes that investors, pretty much anyone, but we're talking about property investors, of course, the nature of the podcast. I think it's one of the biggest mistakes that they can make. I think there's a huge amount of uncalculated opportunity cost that resides in the comforting bosom of inaction, where people just can choose to do nothing and they just don't actually realize what it's costing them. Much in the same way that it might be nice to eat pizzas every single night of the week, but there's probably going to be a cost to that. And so I think sometimes we can see the cost a little more clearly, and sometimes we can't and don't and won't, and we choose to avoid them. But really, just because you ignore something doesn't make it untrue.
So what do you mean by it's probably the biggest risk for people?
Well, I think so. When we're thinking about opportunity cost, I think a lot of people kind of talk about it. They might say those words, opportunity cost, but I don't think I really understand what it means. There's two major costs with opportunity cost. There's financial and then there's emotional. They're the kind of big headlines, and there's everything kind of falls within those two key categories. And for a lot of people who, want to wait and sit on the sidelines, there's a huge, very real financial cost to doing nothing. So essentially, and the way that I like to think about it is with that, and we'll talk about some numbers, I guess, in a minute, but like the financial implication of opportunity cost is essentially your financial trade-off to sit on the couch and do nothing. And so if you think about it like that, you've got to then weigh up what is the value of the time that you're spending, and is it actually doing the right stuff to get you to where you want to go? Is that too ambiguous?
No, I think it's good. I think it's because it's not just about like doing nothing. People might think like, is it a yes or is it a no, and what is the cost of that? But it's also by choosing the no, like that is a choice, like it's an action. So that has a cost. It has a benefit as well, but it has a cost that needs to be considered when you're considering all of your options and what strategy you should follow.
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, let's just put some real framework around it. So we've got something to talk about. Okay, so if let's just use the example of a property investor, and let's just use the example of a $500,000 property, for example.
Yep.
Okay. Now, if we also then make an assumption using the 30-year average housing growth rate of 6.8% as our benchmark for growth, then what we can easily say is that on a $500,000 property, if you in 1 year at 6.8% growth, you'll make a $34,000 capital gain. Now, said another way, if you don't go and buy that property, if you choose to wait another year, if you choose to just, think about it a little longer, there's a real actual cost to that, a real financial cost, because you can't just make that up later. We'll go into like the compounding exponential rate of decline in a minute. But, if you think about it from this perspective, for every month that you wait, so if we say $34,000 gain on a $500,000 property over 12 months growing at 6.8%, so $34,000 divided by 12 is a real cost of $2,833 a month, which is usually a lot more than people will be saving.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, which I guess that's what people tend to think, right, when they want to wait, or particularly in this environment, right? People aren't really sure and there's so much going on, so people just go, I'm gonna wait until, you know, things settle down. And when really there's things that they can do now. And like you said, what, 2,800 a month in potential gain.
Yeah, $93 a day. $93 a day. Like now, so here's the way to think about it. Now, you might not be able to take action, and maybe you can't buy a $500,000 property. Maybe you can only buy a $200,000 property. Maybe you can't buy any property. You know, there's a whole bunch of different circumstances surrounding this. But the point is not to, you know, harass and harangue people to go and buy a property. It's to open up the idea to really start thinking about the real cost of the opportunity. So if you took that example, let's just say you had $100,000 and that was enough capital for you to go and buy a $500,000 property, and you decided not to. Let's just say for whatever reason you decided not to. I don't think 2020 is the year for me. Maybe I'll wait until next year. Maybe we should think about this a little bit more. And just like putting all that kind of stuff aside. So then that would be $34,000 of lost capital gain that you don't get, which would actually equate to $93 a day. So the cost of the choice is you saying, I'm prepared to pay $93.15 per day to do nothing. That is the cost of that choice. So when you actually frame it like that, would you pay to do nothing? Most people say that they don't want to pay because they're worried about what they might not get in the future. But if you flip it back around the other way and say, well, what am I paying to not have right now? That is a hugely different way to think about it. I mean, I've got a gym membership and it costs me like $90 a month. I think about that. I'm like, okay, it's $90 a month. It's coming down not $93.15 a day. You know, and I think, and if somebody said to me, you know, for a lot of people, that's a significant portion of their daily wage. You know, $93 of cost. If you said to someone, would you pay $93 to not do anything? I don't think there would be many people that would take up that deal. Do you?
No, probably not.
So the other side of it is it's not just that that kind of rate of return, but it also kind of delays everything else as well. So let's just run down this example. There's the compounded losses over time, and then there's the compounded losses of not being able to transfer that capital into new opportunities later. So let's talk about that. If we just took a snapshot and said, okay, a $500,000 property, 6.8% growth over a 12-month period of time, $34,000 in growth, right?
Yep.
However, if that property then became $534,000, and then the very next year you went and bought a $500,000 property, and then we were comparing those two side by side, one of them is now worth $534,000 and one of them is only worth $500,000 because that's what you've gone and bought. The compounding, the exponential compound on that, because you're going to be compounding a higher dollar value amount, is actually going to increase. So the loss actually gets bigger over time. Now, if we look at a 6.8% capital growth rate on a $500,000 property, we're looking at $34,000 in the first year, $70,000 in the second year. When we get to the 10th year, it's $465,345. You know, so most people who dilly-dally around and don't take action are actually costing themselves hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's not just in the bringing it back all the way down to a scale of one day and going, oh, it's costing me $93 a day to do nothing. Yeah. It's what is that costing my future self? What is that costing future me? And how much would I pay to have that now? And how fast can I bring that forward? Does that kind of make sense?
Totally. And then if you applied that, if you thought about whatever your long-term timeline is, let's say 20 years.
Yeah.
If you actually calculated that out, modeled that out, and then divided that by the amount of days, and then applied that as a daily cost, that would be phenomenal.
Oh, it's insane, right? So another way to think about it. So we'll try and position this in a few different ways to give people enough mental models for it to apply to different ways of thinking. If you had a goal to buy 10 properties over 10 years, and you could choose to buy one property in the first year and 9 in the 10th year, or 10 in the first year and none in the 10th year, just buy 10 in the first year, what do you think would give you a better return?
More earlier.
Yeah, more earlier. Now, this is not me saying that you should rush into things and make hasty decisions or anything like that. But the reality is, the sooner that you can get your money to start working for you, the sooner you're going to get those returns. So if you're looking and any time you want to extend that timeline out, you're going to extend out the benefit by an exponential volume. You know, another way to think about it would be, you know, if I was to buy a $300,000 house versus buying a $300,000, if I was to buy a $300,000 house today versus a $300,000 house 10 years ago, would I be better off now? Damn sure I would be. Damn sure I would be.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we kind of wanted to touch on this because I think the concept to people of like, I'm going to buy X amount of properties for whatever reason, they've got their personal reasons for that, you know, that metric that they want to hit. And it's easy enough to kind of go, look, I'm going to buy X every X years and then I'm going to be free. And it's quite easy to wrap your head around that. So people go like, nah, that's what I'm going to do. And that's just how it works. And, you know, and it's not just in property, right? This is the same with any kind of investment, any kind of decision in life, I think has this similar kind of cadence. But we're kind of talking about this to show that like, if you actually just think about it a little bit more and don't get caught in the emotion of like, oh, well, that feels right. It feels like a good cadence and it feels like the way you're meant to do it, and actually go, okay, what's the unemotional best strategy right now? If I can do more now and the only thing that's stopping me from doing that is fear, like the rest of the mechanics of my current situation mean that I can do that. And the opportunity cost is arising simply because I feel uncomfortable, or I feel like that's not what you're meant to do. You're meant to just be steady and just keep going. But what we're kind of talking about here is if you can kind of shorten that to be shorter at the start, then it's going to pay off down the track. So it's not even just about the day-to-day opportunity costs now. It's about the, as you were saying, the massive returns that you're missing out on over the long term from compounding and all of that.
Totally. You touched on a really good point there. It's about fear, right? And about stepping outside your comfort zone, because I don't really know many people who are proud of not being decisive and are proud to be scared to take action. I don't really know many people. I know a lot of people who are scared to take action. I know a lot of people, myself included, who faced up to uncomfortable and challenging situations and been too scared to take action. And I know within myself, when I've had those situations and I've looked back on them, I've felt a little down. I'm like, why didn't I just do it? It would have been awesome. You know, I'm thinking of one example right now. For me, I get a little scared of heights, or I'm pretty less scared of them now. But when I was younger, I was in Boy Scouts, right? Scouts.
Yep.
And we'd go abseiling. So we'd get up to the top of this big cliff or whatever, and I would just be absolutely terrified. Like I would be absolutely like beside myself with terror. And it was so funny because all of the other guys, they'd all be going down, they'll be having a great time, and it literally took me hours. The first time I did it, it took me 3 hours to get up the courage to actually start taking the move over the edge. And then it was a 30-meter cliff, and it took me 1 hour to descend a 30-meter cliff. 1 hour. In the meantime, everyone else is, a few sirens going on. In the meantime, everyone else has, had multiple goes. Their skills are improving. Some of them are moving on to more advanced stuff. And I'm basically crying my way down the first one. Now, after I got through that, it became a lot easier, and I went and did more and more and more, and it was great. But it took me so long. Basically, it took me the whole day just to do one, and everybody else had done maybe 10 or 12 different abseils. So the same kind of thing applies. Now, what you also kind of touched on there was not just that kind of like emotional implication of not taking action, but also trying to step outside your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And also you talked about the future pacing of opportunity cost, because what we established is if there is a compound rate of financial return, there is also the opportunity cost of what can be done with that return. Right. So it's not just about going, if I buy a $500,000 property today, I'll have 34 grand more in 12 months, and 70 grand in 2 years. You might go, well, that's cool. I mean, what's 70 grand going to do over the course of my whole life? I'll deal with it. It's a drop in the pond, or whatever the case may be. However, if you took that 70 grand and then applied that to creating another opportunity, then that would create a new opportunity. And then the same thing would happen again, and the same thing would happen again. And then you start to create exponential impact.
It's almost fractal.
It's very fractal. It's very fractal, very fractal economics. So it's not even just the linear thing, because a lot of people might go, it's cool. Like, I know it might cost me 50 grand or something like that, but I'm cool with that. It's like 50 grand now versus 50 grand in the future are two very, very different things.
Totally.
Yeah. So the other thing I think that a lot of people don't think about is, and we kind of just started straying into that territory. What is the emotional implication of it? Now, I don't know of many investors who invest just because they're bored. Most property investors are investing because they want a better life.
Yeah.
You know, they want more time, they want more money, they want more freedom, they want all that kind of good stuff that comes with creating more financial affluence. You know, and that's why we use real estate as a vehicle to achieve those kind of financial goals. So then you got to think about, well, why do I even want to do that? Like, why is that important? Why is it important for me to achieve those kind of financial goals? And then when you start straying down that territory, so, you know, for me, you know, I want us to have a fantastic life, you know, like for some people, it could be, I want to send my kids to a better school. I want to have more impact. I want to be an example in my community. I want the other people in my family to look up to me and say, look, they went and achieved something.
Yeah.
You've got all these kind of things that go. And so once you actually start thinking about that, like, why actually even is it important for me to achieve greater levels of prosperity? Because if it's not important, don't do it. But if it is important, then why are you delaying that?
Why are you delaying that?
Well, I mean, it's a big thing, right? Because if you said to yourself, and I'm very interested in your perspective on this, Gabby. If you said to yourself, all right, cool, I'm going to start investing. And the reason I'm going to start investing is because I want to take care of my mum because she's getting older. And so I want to make sure that I've created enough of a financial cushion to look after my mum because she looked after me and I love her and it's so important to me. Fantastic. All right. So mum, we'll write mum down on a bit of paper. We've got mum. Why else? Well, you know, I don't want to have to work forever. Well, why not? What's wrong with work? Well, maybe I want to travel more. I've got a desire to see the world. We only have one life. We only have one opportunity to have experience. I really want some more time to write a book. And you know what? I really feel like there's a deeper part of me that is destined to help other people. I'm not quite sure what that looks like yet, but I just know that if I had the resources, the time and the money and all of that kind of stuff, I know that I'd be able to do something big. I know I'd be able to change somebody else's life. And I want to have some kids as well. And I want to be able to send those kids to great school. I don't want them to have to, like, I don't want to spoil them, but I want them to get good education. I want to do all that kind of stuff. Now, once you've kind of tied yourself to that emotional position, which I think everyone really think about it for a second, like, why are you even doing this? Then ask yourself, is it even fair for you to kick that can down the road?
Yeah. It's super interesting, right? Because it's it's almost it's the death by 1,000 cuts analogy, where with that analogy, it's that the worst kind of death you can have is by like all the tiny little slices that eventually bleed you out. They're not the big like chop the arm off or that kind of thing, but it's with that, it's like all the little times that you waste or all the little dollars that you waste. You hear it talk about a lot in budgeting and things. So it's death by 1,000 cuts in terms of all the little minor decisions that you make where you could have stepped into the person that you want to be. So, you know, it's like every day that you go, oh, I'll do it tomorrow. Or every day that you think, oh, I'm not that person yet. Or I'm like, that's a next month or that's a next year. Or like, no, there's some other stuff happening at the moment. I'm just going to like kick that down the road. Like you said, it's all of that. It's the reverse of that compounding effect. And it's like the sooner that you can actually address that, the sooner you'll actually get to those goals that you say that you want, but your actions don't actually indicate that you do want that, right? Because every time you make a decision that goes in the opposite direction, you're delaying that and delaying the magnification of that. Because you might think like, okay, I've got this plan. I'm going to reach all of my goals in 5 years. But actually, if you delay, think about every decision along that way. If your like linear path means that you're going to get there in 5 years, every second decision you make is actually against that decision, then you're not just doubling that timeline. You're probably, I don't know the exponential math, but it would be way blowing it out because it's all compounding. It's not purely linear, but it's still just every day thinking about those decisions of, I've got this plan and I'm saying that I want to do all these things for all of these reasons, but every day I'm making decisions that are rooted in fear and rooted in an older version of myself that I don't really want to be anymore.
I think that's perfect.
That went a little bit high level.
Great. That was awesome. Because if you think now, a lot of people have got 10-year goals. If you think now, what if you had the wealth today that you could have in 10 years' time? What would that do? What would that change? Now, you know, the biggest cause of problems in relationships, or the biggest reason for fights and marriage breakdowns and relationship breakdowns, is money, right? We all know that.
Yep.
We all know that intrinsically. And it's not necessarily just fighting about, right, oh, well, you bought a dress and I want to buy a motorbike or whatever. It's normally, maybe it's stress. It's stress related. And this comes through in non-linear ways as well. You know, when you don't have enough money, when you feel like you're stressed out, when you feel like you're fighting and not achieving anything, when you lack the confidence, and you start to undermine your own sense of self-worth because you know that you're not achieving everything you can achieve, that is what corrodes a relationship. It's not just money. It's all of the other crap that goes with feeling like you're not achieving enough.
Yeah.
So if you can have the wealth in 10 years, if you could have your wealth goal in 10 years, and if you could have that today, what would that change for you? How would that change your life? What would you do differently? Now, in today's day and age, maybe you can't travel the world right now, but what would you do differently? How would your life be different if you had your wealth in 10 years' time? If you had it today, what would change? Then imagine if you'd been able to, if you'd been cognizant enough, if you had had the awareness, if you had had the courage, if you had had the action bias to take those actions that you're taking today 10 years ago, how would your life be different now? And how would your life be different in 10 years from now? And it's huge. I mean, God, I remember when I was 18 years old and my brother was talking about houses. And he was like, oh, you can't go wrong with bricks and mortar and all of these kind of, kind of phrases. And I was thinking, dude, what are you on about? Like, why would I want to buy a house? Like, why would I want to buy a house? Like, I'm going to a party. What's going on? Don't spend all your money on that. It's going to be stuck. You can't spend it. I was like, now I'm like, oh my God. Just imagine how my life would be different. I'd be enraptured. And this is the kind of thing. And now you don't need to imagine it because you can actually start to do it now. And now the actual cost of opportunity is the thing that people don't really calculate. There's the real deep psychological cost. There's the being stuck in your job. There is the failing relationships or potentially better relationships if you do take action, all of that kind of stuff. Now, this is not to change the fact that there are limitations on how you can, say, invest in property. Maybe you don't have any cash. Maybe you got none. Maybe you got none. Maybe you got zero cash. But that doesn't mean that you can't start taking action now, And everything that we want in life is completely available to any of us at any point in time, as long as we're prepared to step outside of our comfort zone. And as long as we're prepared to stay the course. Just because you decide I want $10 million and I'm prepared to step outside my comfort zone doesn't mean you're going to get $10 million. But if you are prepared to continuously push yourself outside your comfort zone, assess risks, take action, course correct, pick yourself up after failures and keep going, you will get to where you want to go 10, 20, 100 times faster than everybody else.
Yeah, I was just remembering I can't remember who said it. I think it was Dean Graziosi, but it was basically we're talking about wealth and property at the moment. So it's, get property and get your wealth underway as soon as possible in a short amount of time as possible so that you can get that just out of the way and you don't have to worry about that anymore. And then you can live your life however you want to live it and live out your passion and your values and not have to worry about the wealth. And I think people see us, we work quite a lot. We're quite passionate in what we do. Mm-hmm. And it's part of our makeup to just kind of keep going. But part of that is because we understand the opportunity costs of what we're doing. We understand that if we put in the work now, that's the start, that's the base of that compounding interest, right? And it's the base of getting everything set up now so that, hopefully things are packed away in a couple of years and then we can just go and do things and not have to worry about money. And I think it's ultimately what everyone wants. And I think, just to flag that you might see people who work all the time and just think that they're kind of crazy or workaholics for the sake of it or whatever, but we're trying to put this lens over, get it done as soon as possible so that you can do other things that, might require money, but you don't have to worry about money anymore.
Yep.
So I think with that's the opportunity cost. I think that's how we're kind of applying it.
Totally.
Yeah.
And taking action doesn't guarantee success either.
No.
Like taking action does not guarantee success. And I think that's one of the big things. So a lot of reasons that people sit on the sidelines is because they're scared of failure. They're scared of making a mistake. But I can absolutely guarantee, no one can guarantee success, but I can absolutely guarantee that by doing nothing, you will achieve failure, or you'll achieve success at doing nothing. And one of my favorite and most impactful quotes, and I don't know where this originated from, it's maybe from Keith Cunningham, might be from Tony. I'm not actually sure where it originally came from. But the quote is, hell on earth would be to meet the man that you could have been. Now, change that from man or woman, or whatever the case may be, but hell on earth would be to meet the person that you could have been. And I think that is so insanely, it's hardcore when you think about that. Imagine getting to 60, 70 years old and then coming across you in the street and meeting the person that you could have been. I want to meet that.
It's terrifying.
It's terrifying, right? I want to be able to meet that person and stare him in the eye and say, I am you. And that
fair play.
Yeah, totally. And so I think that's where I think people need to start pushing themselves out of their comfort zone. It needs to get emotional. It needs to get raw. It needs to get real. Action, stepping outside of your comfort zone never comes from a place of complacency, because humans by nature have a propensity to want to seek out comfort. Most people wouldn't like to have a freezing cold shower because it's uncomfortable, not because the water's dangerous, not because anything bad is going to happen. It's just because it's uncomfortable. Most people would scream, it's cold, and they'll jump out. People don't seek out discomfort, but everything you seek in life is on the other side of that. So we've talked about the actual financial cost, and we really went deep into the emotional cost, which I think is one of the harder things to calculate. Now, and again, not everyone has the ability, the financial capacity to, say, go and invest in property right now. But the other thing that I would say is that everyone has the decision. Everyone has the capacity to take action in some way. Take action on changing your habits. Take action on, crafting whatever pathway you need to get to where you want to go. And what we do is designed to help people to do that much faster. Mm-hmm. Our whole business was built around not some innate desire to start some real estate company, but it was because we knew that if we could help people, we could help people to achieve more in a shorter period of time. Yeah. So I think that's probably like the overarching message that I want to leave here. It's not to pitch ours as a business, but the reality is, if you're struggling to make those decisions, if you're struggling with the time required to do the work to avoid failure and to find greater levels of success, you've got a couple of options. You really only got two options. You can either go it alone, or you can seek out some help. Now, there are different ways you can seek help from us. You can head to theinvestorlab.com.au and you can access the cadre of free resources and tools and guides and go and have a crack. Or if you want some professional help, then you can just come and speak to us directly, and we'd be more than happy to provide some advice and to help you understand what the best next step is. Is it even the right time to get started? Because sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not to get started on buying a property, but you might be able to do something else to get ready. And this is the thing. It's a long journey, and as you kind of spoke about earlier, there's an exponential rate of return. Mm. If you're in business, you don't start a $10 million company in the first year, right? The 10 million dollar company probably doesn't even come in the 10th year. Because of the exponential rate of return, depending on the growth rate of anything, will completely change that. But what you might find is that if you have a $1 million business in the first year, it could be a $10 billion business by the 20th year, as long as you can take action and start to move that flywheel. Because that's really what it's all about. It's about starting the action of turning that flywheel and building up the momentum that you need. And once that momentum starts to go, it only takes a little swoop in the hand to keep that thing rolling around. So.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Short, impactful, powerful, good episode, Gabby.
Yeah.
If you need anything from us, then just head to theinvestorlab.com.au, reach out, let us know. And in the meantime, we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.